back, everyone. My next guest has been on with me also for many, 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 many years. I have with me Anna Von Straussenburg, and she's the owner of Anna Von Straussenburg, CPA. Welcome back to the show. I want you to first, before we're going to do anything else, we want to talk about you and how, a little bit about what you do, and you're all about excellence and integrity in accounting.
Okay, thank you for having me back, Carol. I always enjoy being here. It's been over 5
years.
Over 5 years, yeah.
In November, it'll be 6.
Yeah, it's amazing how the time has flown by. But yeah, I call myself a backdoor accountant because I had a degree in liberal studies, which is good if you want to become a teacher, but really useless if you want to do anything else in the world. And so after working in the teaching profession for a few years, my husband said to me, you need to quit that job and, find something that you're really suited to. And I'm bawling my eyes out and going, I'm not required to do anything, and I'm not qualified, and And anyway, he says, no, think about it. He goes, who else does their family budget on a spreadsheet? He said, you balance our checking account to the penny every month. You watch our finances like a hawk. He said, you should go into accounting. And so he goes, start off on the bottom rung if that's what you have to do. And so I got a job as a receptionist at an accounting firm. And after I got a firm foundation there, I went back to school and took all the accounting courses to pass the CPA exam.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I met my goal. It took me a few years to do it because I was doing it at night school, and first started off with kind of one class at a time, and then thought, well, you know what, I need to step up my game and make a plan. And so I decided that I wanted to be a CPA by the time I turned 40. I actually completed the tax work a couple years before that, but then I didn't realize you had to do a couple years kind of like an internship. You have to work under another CPA and do, in California at the time, you had to do an awful lot of auditing. I think it was like 2,500 hours or something like that. It was a lot, and so it really took 2 years to do it. And so we applied for my CPA license the week of my 40th birthday. So I counted as meeting my goal because it was awesome. About as close as I could get. So,
but excellence and integrity in accounting, you stand by your work 100%, right?
I do.
But just about the way she is, you exude what you say.
I do. I live my life by that. Since I was a kid, I really I'm making a point to never tell a lie. Even when I've gone into a gray area, I've always regretted it. Like the little white lie. Well, I can't live with myself. Even the littlest things just drive me bananas. And so that's one of the things I do. And yes, we're human, and mistakes do happen occasionally. Things just out of our control sometimes. And if I can't get a client's penalty waived, I will pay it myself, and I have. And so that motivates me to do an even better job. But things just sometimes happen.
Right, but you know what? You have been doing what you do for how long?
Well, I started working at the accounting firm. This was my 35th tax season.
Wow, congratulations.
I was, a receptionist at the time, but I was still learning about taxes because they needed, when you have tax season, it's all hands on deck. And everybody has to do some part of the tax return, so I was helping assemble them. And, you learn a lot by osmosis when you're just assembling the tax returns, because you see the numbers on the page. And, of course, I'm just a curious, nosy person, and so I'd start reading through them a little bit.
So you learned on the way.
I learned on the way. And, of course, my dad was kind of very good at financial education, and as a punishment one time for procrastinating on a term paper that he ended up having to type for me, he made me type his income tax return.
Ooh, that's a big one.
And that's back in the days.
That's good. I gotta remember that.
Typewriters had autocorrect or anything, so you couldn't make mistakes.
Wow.
And then he sat down with me and explained to me what I had just typed. And so I learned a lot. I had picked up a job during college doing just simple tax returns and pen and paper. we write them out in pencil first, and then when they're all done, we copy them into ink.
Oh my gosh, you happen to
Can't
like
do that anymore.
you like complicated returns, but you all today wanted to talk about a couple of different things that sort of piggybacked off of what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, well, I was listening to
To Sandy.
Sandy ahead of me, and one of the things it dawned on me, actually on the drive over here, I thought, oh, I really need to talk about end-of-life planning because it is so important. And it's a lot of times people, the last thing they want to think about finances, but right after doing your funeral planning, you really do need to talk about finances, and hopefully you put some plans in place ahead of time so that the trustee or your executor is not scrambling.
Right.
So one of the things you need to do when you go to your attorney to set up your will and or trusts, make sure you include your CPA in on the planning. And one of the things too is you also need to talk to your financial advisor, because they need to, if there's a person has investments, those investments need to be adjusted as of the date of death. And that's very, very important. There's so many little nuances when that happens. And I work hand in hand with fiduciaries who work as trustees for people who had no trustee. I've worked hand in hand with attorneys and handling the estates. I'm actually working with one quite large estate, and it's quite an interesting process because sometimes the hope is to wrap up an estate within 2 years, but then sometimes there's a trust that continues beyond that. And there's so much planning that needs to be done. Like I was just reading an article today that said, was talking about different considerations, and they said, well, one thing you really need to do is consider how you time the distributions to the beneficiaries, because if you give away a whole bunch of money at the beginning, well, you might be, what does it say?
Short on cash
or cutting off your nose to spite your face, because you may be moving income to the beneficiaries, but yet you're not taking advantage of that income deduction, because trusts pay high taxes. And so you want to balance out how much you're distributing with how much income the trust is getting, and make it so that you're not like over distributing and then under distributing and end up paying taxes at the trust level. So it's important.
And there's taxes after death.
Yes. You can't escape it,
That's something that people think that it's before
yes.
that.
And many times I have recently done a lot of tax returns for people who have passed away, and they have their own set of complications, so I do not recommend that you do it, because there's a bunch of special forms you need to fill out, and believe me, I've had some people come to me to straighten out the situation because they didn't do it correctly. They didn't know how to answer some of the questions that TurboTax or whatever said to them.
That's not that they weren't made up for that.
Yeah, and so it's really important, especially if you're getting a refund. That can be really squirrely. There's special forms you have to do to request the refund and show what your status is.
It could be squirrely. I never heard that before, but it can be bad. If that's squirrely, you don't want that.
Yeah, you don't want it to be overly complicated. And sometimes, I tell people, sometimes it's worth it to spend the money to hire a good CPA, a good attorney, to make sure things are handled properly.
I personally think that everyone should automatically have to have that, because it would make it so much easier, because unfortunately when money's involved, sometimes things don't go the way they should.
Yes,
right?
yes.
And we know that. But the main thing is that you should have a CPA on hand, especially if you've got a trust involved and there's a estate, real estate and all of that. Wow, that becomes a little bit squirrely.
Yeah, it does. And it's not a situation where you wanna do it yourself.
So you can check her out on her website, which is Arizona CPAs with an S.com. She does free consultations. She's rated with the Better Business Bureau. She does second opinions. She helps especially if someone has passed away, you want to make sure that you have a CPA along with your attorney or financial advisor. Their phone number is 480-964-4030. That's 480-964-4030. Hang tight. We'll be back in just a minute.
Okay.
That's
Anyway,
going
well, we got
crazy.
that out. I'm
Yeah.
glad we got that covered because that's really important. And
Yeah,
it's
I don't
funny,
think
I've been
we
thinking
talk about
about
that
it
very
so much lately. It's crazy. Well, we've got an aging population.
She said she's super busy right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
And so, and it's sad to see that some people, end up not having a good set of plans in place, which means, the person I work with who's a fiduciary, has to run down to the courthouse and get appointed, and, there's a lot of things to be done. And so really thinking ahead of time is very important. And, and I know one of my friends just reached out to me now. She's younger than I am, but she said, you know what? I realized I need to get my will in place. My mother is in hospice. My dad is showing some signs of early dementia. She said, I think I need to get things in place now. And so she reached out to me, and I was able to provide a referral to her from somebody I met on the show.
Oh, great.
So I met him, I looked it up and I'm like, oh, that was 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and but I remembered the name and I thought, well, I should reach, let my friend reach out to him.
That's
because
nice.
he was very highly recommended, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think that what it is that when so many people, a lot of people get them done very, a long time ago, and they don't take them out, and they don't have them dusted off, and they're wrong, a lot of the times,
Mhm.
or even if it could be sooner that they had done it, and they didn't have the other pieces in place when it comes to the tax part of all of this.
Oh, yeah, very important, so.
I mean,
it's-
the person that takes over doing all of that work, the executor,
Yeah.
right? That is a lot of work for that person.
Oh, it's huge. I was the executor for my parents' estate. Go figure, they choose the accountant in the family.
30?
So,
Of course.
Yeah, and it was a lot of work, because I haven't quite wrapped it all up yet, because we had one investment hanging out there.
Mm.
So, and it's been 5 years.
Oh my God, yeah,
Almost
I
5
remember
years.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and when we come back, I have something more to say about that.
We're gonna say about it right now. Almost
Okay.
coming back. So welcome back, everyone. We also are on Facebook right now, so hello to everybody out there as well. We're speaking with Anna Von Straussenburg. We're talking about taxes. We're talking about, I should say, death and taxes. But you have a few more things that you did want to talk about.
Well, one of the things I wanted to say, because a lot of people have trusts set up now, because the trusts do help avoid probate, and especially if you have higher income levels or higher estate, levels.
Money.
And money, and by the way, there's two kinds of estate taxes. There is the estate tax form, which is a 706. I don't do those because they call for valuations that I don't feel qualified to do. And then there's the 1041, which is the estate income tax. So when this estate goes beyond, you have an income tax. Now, one thing you can do is there is a special election, because even though you have a trust, you also have an estate, and they might be one and the same, but you can make an election to treat them as one. And thankfully, my mother's lawyer was very savvy, and when he got the EIN for the trust and the estate, he made the election right then and there to treat them as one. You know, reminded me to do the, which I knew I needed to do it, but do the tax election as well. And that was super important. And there's so many other things. It's also important to include your CPA when you're setting up the trust, because I can make suggestions like, you know, setting it up so that you can distribute capital gains and get the tax deduction. Because if it's not written in the trust, guess what? It's too bad, so sad, you don't get the deduction. It's one of those weird little quirks, and I have to say, tax law is full of it. But I didn't mean to sound that way, full of weird little quirks.
Little squirrely things.
Yes.
So, I mean, but okay, let's talk about real estate, because I know you wanted to kind of segue into that as well.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of my clients invested in real estate, and that's again something I got a chance to learn a little bit firsthand because my dad invested in real estate. So I learned a little bit even as a teenager about tax reporting, but now, because that was something I was also interested in when I decided to change careers. And so I made it a point to learn about the taxes for real estate, because that's just something that, you know, I'm passionate about. And so quite a few of my clients, I would say probably more than half, are invested in real estate in some way, shape, or form. So,
and you know, a lot of people here now are they're renting out their homes, right? You know, some of them are turning them into a business, an Airbnb, right?
And there's different laws depending on, okay, whether you stay in that house. Well, if you don't stay in there for more than 14 days, then there's different rules. There are so many different rules. Sometimes those Airbnbs can actually be reported more like a business rather than a rental. So there's differences in how you report them tax-wise. So when it's short-term, then there's different rules. And so it's so important to get a CPA involved, not a time to do it yourself.
No, I don't think anybody should. I mean, if you have a simple, you know that it's simple, like if you work part-time somewhere, or it's, you know,
or you just have just a W-2, no mortgage, no nothing.
Right. But you know, a lot of people now have a lot of side hustles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and sometimes the side hustles can be businesses, and sometimes they're considered hobbies. And so you have to look at all the different things that you're doing in the business, to whether, you know, do you have a separate bank account? The IRS will ask that question, because I've had clients audited, you know, do you have a separate bank for your business? Oh, answer is no. Well, that's a black mark. Do you advertise your business? The answer better be yes. You know, are you trying to make a profit? And you don't necessarily have to make a profit, but you need to show that you're taking steps to make a profit. So, and there's all those different nuances to having a side hustle.
Right, and so many people do today because they need the money.
And a lot of people do things like, you know, DoorDash or Uber or Lyft, and to make a little extra money. Well, you know, if you're not sure what you're doing, maybe you need to come to a CPA to do taxes. And those actually, you know, Uber does provide pretty good reports for us to do the taxes from. So they're actually fairly easy. I have a few Uber drivers. Their tax returns don't cost a whole arm and a leg, but I make sure that they report it correctly, and a lot of times they end up getting some money back because they don't always realize how much they're paying in expenses to drive that Uber.
Right. Well, hey, about my daughter is a perfect example that didn't know when she flew to New York to go to an audition. She didn't know all the write-offs that were possible.
Yeah. She gave me her plane ticket. I said, well, did you stay in a hotel? Oh yeah, I stayed in a hotel.
Yeah.
You know, I know she had lived there, so I thought maybe she had friends. But no, we found out she stayed in a hotel. She had to get meals. There were say pay for taxi to and from the audition.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things that are perfectly normal expenses in her field.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely, it just depends on what you do, but you really, honestly, if you have, especially, she loves complicated returns,
Mhm.
but also for anyone, that if you've got some side hustles going on there, please don't try and do these things on yourself. You're more, every time, how many times when you look at it as a second opinion, what do you see?
Well, what I see is 100% of the times I have found errors, and I want to say about 95% of the time I found people money. So
There you go.
one person I actually did, you know, she had not reported some things when she did her own tax returns, so of course she owed more, but I actually found a way that she could have reduced it some if she wanted to get the information, but she decided she didn't want to get the information, but oh well.
Well, I'll give you the information. Her phone number is 480-964-4030. That's 480-964-4030. Check her out. She does free consultations. You can check her out on her website, which is ArizonaCPAs.com, both individual and personal, business and personal taxes. And I was going to say something, and now I forgot what I was going to say. Something about you with doing taxes and how important it is for people. Right now, I knew it. I got it back in my head when I started talking, which is people got extensions.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you think it's summertime and you've got it off? No, you don't. You got to get prepared.
Yeah, we're working on people who we put on extensions, and trying to get them in and get them out again. You know, so that we're not going to be bogged down in September and October. But,
Right.
you know, it always happens. The rush is just normal part of my life. So, and I had thought of something I wanted to say.
See, it's very difficult, folks. You try
It was one
it.
of those days today, I think. But yeah, I wanted to say that, you know, I have a new employee that's doing some marketing for me. So on my website is a link to my Facebook page, which I'm very proud of because it's getting a little more traction. So
Well, that's nice. We'll go up onto the website. It's ArizonaCPAs.com.
yeah, and the other thing I wanted to say is, like, I just signed up for a big chunk of my continuing education. That's one of the things I have to do as a CPA. So one of the things that I think is an advantage to have a CPA over just a tax preparer is we're required to do 40 hours a year of continuing education. I do most of it in tax, and I actually rack up about 60 hours a year.
I'm not surprised.
I attend a couple of long courses that are 3 days, so it's a seminar, so it's right there, it's 24 hours, and then usually I go to a conference, and so I get another 20 hours there, and then I pick up a few classes here and there. And so, you know, continuing to be educated is super important because, you know, this year they came out with the One Big Beautiful Bill, and a lot of changes have happened. Well, it came out in, you know, 2025, but it's affecting 2026. And so it was one of those things I had to really get educated about.
It is, and it's a big bill.
Yeah.
It's got a
Big.
lot of pages
Yes.
to it. Folks, if you are doing any of this and you're listening to this, please give her a call. It is so important that you do have somebody who's educated, who has been doing this for how long have you said? 35 years?
Yep.
You know, and on top of that, she's one of the nicest people I've ever met. Not really, and I've met a lot of people, but what really is, she takes on her clients. She works with you hand in hand. It's not like you just give her your stuff and then you see it's done and that's it, and you just get whatever your return is or what have you. She really teaches you to know your numbers and understand everything and works with you hands on. Again, that number to call her is 480-964-4030. That's 480-964-4030. It's ArizonaCPAs.com.